Evening, one and all. Welcome to Archant Towers.
We've made it back.
Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Yeah, apologies straight away, because if it looks like we're comatose, that's probably because we do feel a little bit like that. As it's been, what was it, 500-mile round trip, 10 hours worth of driving. Sorry, yeah. Anyway,
I can hear all those tiny little violins playing for us.
Yeah. Keep me awake, that's what we need. But so we'll obviously...
I've travelled longer than you today, though.
Yeah, of course, yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, maybe we should get the introductions out of the way. We have on my left, probably looks like right if you're watching this, Stuart Hodge, formerly of the parish, formerly commentator on Norwich City TV, mate. Am I right in saying that?
That is right.
Was that your correct former title?
I think it was.
One among many.
Norwich City commentator we'll go with. Sports pundit extraordinaire.
And now?
And now just occasional sports pundit, still commentating. Not Norwich City. Teams from sort of like kind of Champions League kind of standard, maybe a better standard of football. But you say formerly of this parish, Paddy, but home is where the heart is, and this is very much my second home, so it's good to be back.
So we'll get into what this man's been up to, but more importantly with a Norwich perspective on it. You know, we'll get his inside expert knowledge on some of the Norwich guys who are up north of the border and how they're getting on, and with a view to next season. Obviously, you know, this man on my right, Dave Freezer, we were both at a Stadium of Light last night, which you already know because I've already moaned about the length of time it took us to get there and get back. So by all means, you know, we'll be guided by you as always on this. You know, get your questions in.
The laptop is ready.
The laptop is here, fired
Hopefully.
up. Yeah, touch wood. So you know, we'll get into any discussions you want around the game last night specifically. But as I say, Hodge is here today, so you know, you're just down flying visit, meeting a few people, but you are taking in the game Saturday, Cardiff City.
And do you know what's going to be great? I'm going to be in the Barclay for the first time.
There you go.
I've been probably around, in fact, I think I've been in every other stand I've watched a game or done something to do with the game, in each other sort of bit of the ground. So to actually get in the Barclay, which, let's be honest, is where the vast majority of the singing often comes from.
Sure it is.
That's going to be a pleasure.
So if there's an increase in the volume, blame this man, or support this man, in fact, because obviously the atmosphere at
I'll
Canaries
be the cheerleader.
hasn't been what it needs to be probably this season for many reasons on the pitch. The entertainment hasn't quite been what it needs to be, but having said that, it could be a good time to be watching them, mate, because obviously last time game Villa 3-1, probably I think Daniel Farker himself admitted their best home performance this season. You know, you wouldn't have seen too much of them live this season, but you know, I'm sure you've been keeping a weather eye from afar. What have you made of the season?
Time for the sort of usual buzzword bingo, but it's a transition season. Everybody said it was going to be that, and I think it's turned into that. There have been highs and lows. There's been periods in the season where Norwich have done things that you would never expect. 5 consecutive clean sheets off the back of conceding 4 goals in 2 consecutive games. It's like, I mean, that was something that said to me, well, Daniel Farker's got it about him tactically somewhat. Yeah. But the other side of it is struggling for goals to an almost chronic extent in many of the home matches. I think there were many people that were critical of sort of Alec Neil and all of the stuff that went before. Norwich City entertained last season. I can vouch for that, having commentated in the games.
86 goals, wasn't it, last season?
Yep, joint top in the division. So to go from that to such a kind of paltry return this season's a bit disappointing, and I can understand why. Maybe some murmurs are just beginning to happen.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Farker-Webber project, how do you think? I mean, as you say, on the pitch, it's a little bit one step forward, one back. It's felt this season. They've openly admitted that. But overall, as a project, I mean, did it excite you when it was? You know, we're getting now just past the 12-month anniversary of Stuart Webber's appointment. Did it excite you the direction they were going, and do you feel it's still progressing in the right direction, albeit maybe not the rate of progress some supporters would like to see?
Well, I think in British football we've often got this thing that we've got this way that it's always happened this way, that we've always done it, people expect it to happen that way, and that is your traditional, people think of it, the manager, he decides who he wants, and then alongside someone in the boardroom they'll get that done. But the majority of the recruitment and all of the sort of backroom stuff, as well as the training the team and picking the 11, that's all the manager's responsibility. what Norwich City did last season is they said, do you know what? Football has moved on and we need to move with the times. So they've adopted a model that's really similar to what you see in Germany and in other countries abroad, where you've got a sporting director who essentially manages all of the business side of it and the implementation of the culture and philosophy on a day-to-day basis. And then you've got a head coach who coaches the team, picks the team. And when Norwich went in that direction, I thought, brilliant. Everyone says that this is a county that's behind the times and all of that sort of rhetoric and yada yada, but this was bold, this was new, this was innovative from Norwich, and I enjoyed that. At this point, I would say Daniel Farke, the jury's out. Stuart Webber, I think simply by virtue of the fact he tied James Maddison down to a long-term deal, and in doing so securing, you would imagine, Norwich City's biggest ever transfer fee when Maddison eventually goes. From a sporting director perspective, he's played a stormer, and he's given himself, with that one move, enough of a sort of leeway to then build when Maddison does go, and to then move the project forward in a new direction again. So I think for him, definite pass marks. For Daniel Farke, it comes down to the start of next season. He needs to start well.
I've got some comments here which follow into that quite nicely. St John Bird says, call me a heretic, but I think Norwich could do just fine next season, even if Maddison leaves. It's more about the quality in front of our well-stocked supply of midfielders. And similarly on the strikers, Jan Blaziak, sorry if I got that wrong. What is wrong with Nelson Oliveira? I mean, of course, last night, 1-1 at Sunderland, lots of chances missed, weren't there? And Oliveira gets a start ahead of Srebeni, and it was, well, he didn't take his opportunity. It's fair to say, isn't it?
That fair to say last night, fair to say most of this season, because ultimately, okay, at the very start, we all know what happened at Fulham that day, and he was less than impressed at playing second fiddle with Cameron Jerome, but it then developed pretty clearly that Nelson was going to be his main man. You know, Jerome was eventually edged out and then moved on to Derby. The opportunity, the platform has been there for Nelson to really grasp it this season, and really show that he is as good as he shows in glimpses. The problem is those glimpses have been few and far between. There's been the whole injury problems. There's been the period back in Portugal when he was trying to get his fitness levels up. There's been one or two more sort of, shall we say, temperamental episodes, and it's just really not worked for him, not clicked for him at all. And now you can see with the game time that Srebeni's getting, that in Daniel Farke's mind, he's almost now edging towards it's going to be Dennis Srebeni out of those two. So I think there's huge question marks against Oliveira going into the summer. Stuart's obviously mentioned, you know, Maddison will be the headline story in the rumour mills and the speculation, but I don't think Nelson Oliveira will be a name that you won't see getting touted with clubs, because you know, ultimately he hasn't done it, and Daniel Farke again has reiterated in the last few days they really do need to address this problem. You know, last night 18 attempts on target, and they're relying on a fullback to score a goal in the 89th minute to salvage a point.
Good finish as well.
It was a good finish.
Showed the attackers how it's done.
But ultimately, you know, it's going to be 11th, 12th, 13th this season. If they want to break that cycle next season, it is really fundamentally for me what they can add at the top end of the pitch, a real regular, consistent goal-scoring threat. If Nelson isn't a man, then you know, they need to be fairly brutal in what they do in the summer, I think.
To look at, I mean, obviously he got a Portugal recall at the start of the season. He was in really good form for a spell, wasn't he? So we know that Nelson can do it based on what we saw last season as well. Last night, I mean, hits the post with a header in the first half. And a second chance when he doesn't manage to put it past the keeper. Second half, shoots over the top left corner when Vrancic was probably the better option in front of him. Then he finally sets up Maddison rather than shooting, but Maddison hits the post. There's so many chances last night. Oliveira, Hodge, I mean, are you surprised that he struggled as much as he has this season? Because, I mean, you saw what he could do last season.
In terms of the standard of player he is, then the answer's got to be yes, because Nelson Oliveira is a player who, if he's performing at 110% of his ability, well, I suppose 100% for any mathematical pedants out there, if he's performed to 100% of his ability, he's one of the best strikers in the division. I don't think there's any question. Yeah. His movement is electric, he's clever, he can link, he can drop, he can play the channels, he can do a little bit of everything. He's decent in the air, he can finish with both feet. He's got those occasional laser-like shots from sort of within 25 yards that just lash into the back of the net. There's a lot there. But what happened at the start of the season is Nelson Oliveira showed a completely different side to his character. And I think Nelson Oliveira as a player, I don't think there's any argument that he adds something to Norwich City. But if that player's not a good teammate, does that reduce the ability of the collective? And I think there's an argument that sometimes this season, maybe in some ways, not all of the time, but Nelson Oliveira maybe hasn't been the best teammate he could be to the rest of the Norwich City dressing room, just from what I've seen.
Well, I think that's pretty clear now. From this point that we go on, the forward line is the big priority now, as it possibly has been for a while, hasn't it? I mean, ever since Grant Holt left, if you really want to bang on that drum. Another thing that we found out last night was Marcus Edwards, wasn't it? He's back to Spurs, won't be coming back either. His loan is finished. Neil Austin asks, he's clearly not happy, emptying his social media from all things Norwich City. Apparently, I haven't noticed that yet. He wasn't particularly active on.
Sure, Norwich will survive. Was he? Such a social snob, but
yeah. And there was another comment about Edwards here, which I'm just trying to spot, but I haven't found it for the moment. But yes, Marcus Edwards, it's not worked, has it? To be fair,
no, it hasn't worked at all. And ultimately, you have to place a large proportion of that at his door. He's a very young man. He's a hugely talented young man. Clearly, you're not coming through at Tottenham's academy if you haven't got something about you. But as we've touched on, the temperamental issues with him, probably it's a maturity thing. I think he's clearly a very young man. First time he's been out of the Tottenham bubble, and Farker himself was very open and honest about his attitude wasn't right. He's questioning his professionalism. You've heard one or two other bits and pieces. And ultimately, the end result of that was 8-minute cameo, I think, against Fulham on Good Friday. Wasn't going to feature in the remaining 4 or 5 games. So ultimately, cut your losses, send him back to Tottenham. And it's one of those, Farker, the way he framed it at the outset, it was a no risk for Norwich. If it came off, then they had a very, very good young player who was going to influence games at Championship level. Norwich, as a result, would have benefited. He would have benefited in terms of a leap forward in his personal development. He goes back to Tottenham, far closer maybe to the first team setup now. He goes back to Tottenham, and there's huge question marks against him. And it might. If he, on his level anyway, if he uses it as a positive experience, then it's something that could, he look back on and think, well, okay, yeah, I learned a huge amount from that experience. But from Norwich's side, well, we'll never get to know whether he was the real deal, because we didn't see him at all, did we? So
the mini Messi, of course, as Pochettino called him.
Yeah, but he needs to go back and really show something, because at Tottenham, I would imagine, if you're not showing the whole package, then you will be nowhere near that first team. And before you know it, I'll throw in names like Ravel Morrison, these type of characters, prodigiously talented.
Exactly who I was thinking.
To Rapt, at QPR, who was at QPR, Ben Arthur, even the guy who was at Newcastle, hugely talented lads, and on their day, scintillating players, but
don't want to follow their path.
Careers end up going down cul-de-sacs, and he's a young man, he's got time on his side, but he really needs to wake up, I think.
I found the comment I was looking for. Matt Johnson, Norwich far better off without Edwards. Horrific attitude. I don't work with the lad day in, day out, or but even watching his efforts at warming up, efforts in air quotes there, at warming up, it was clear he wasn't what Norwich required at this time. I remember when we saw him warming up for the first time, our colleague Michael Bailey was not particularly convinced by his body language, was he? Because he just sort of sauntered out very slowly, as if, I am here. A bit sort of Zlatan, almost like, hello Norwich. But we won't be seeing any more of that.
For a kid that's done nothing in the game, really, to have that sort of attitude, it's not going to cut the mustard. And I think that's the difference, actually. You've obviously got Edwards there, who's someone who has come through the sort of academy setup, big club, all of the trappings, probably on a lot of money at a young time.
Probably a scary wage.
All of these things. Let's contrast that with the man of the moment, James Morrison, Coventry, has to make the grade. Sorry.
Come on.
I don't know what happened there.
Is that a long trip?
I've had a long day as well, guys. Sorry. But Maddison comes through at Coventry. He's got to sort of work hard to earn his place in the team as a young guy. Then comes to Norwich. then people are saying, why is this guy not getting a chance? All of the rest of it. Has to work really hard to even get a sniff under Alex Neil. Then gets sent off to Aberdeen as if, like, go prove yourself now, son. Comes back and look at what Maddison's done this season. So I think what that shows is, if you give a young player too much too young, then maybe they'll begin to believe that hype. Maybe they'll begin to think, do you know what, I'm the be-all and end-all, I'm just going to walk into this Norwich City team. Maddison didn't do that. He had to prove himself time and again and again and again. And then when he's finally got the opportunity to come into this Norwich City team, look at what he's done this season. So the lesson there is, keep working hard. And it applies in anything in life, but in football especially for a young player.
Big time. I like that, Hodgie. Just to go back to the earlier conversation, Joachim Broberg says Oliveira is a clumsy player. Overall, he played okay last night, didn't he? But it's obviously the chances which is the big thing. And Matt Johnson, another comment from Matt here, which tees you up nicely, really, Hodgie, for something we want to talk to you about. Obviously, the Norwich links in Scotland at the moment. Matt says people need to stop assuming the club's going to transform into top 2 or playoff winners during the summer. The job's bigger than that. Ensuring we continue to shift on a few unwanted high earners and replace them with affordable players who Farke wants. And Facebook is holding me up there, but it's got up now. Farke wants, as fits his system, is first priority. If next season NCFC is a more clinical, consistent side next season, competing closer to the playoffs, it will be a success in my eyes. So, that brings us on. Russell Martin, Stephen Naismith, Kenny McLean, obviously Norwich player on loan at Aberdeen, and said Stephen Naismith, didn't I?
That's the trio.
That's the trio. I wanted to ask you about Lafferty as well, actually. Obviously, he isn't a Norwich player, but he seems to have done well for Hearts this season. Him and Naismith playing up front together, aren't they?
Scottish football suits Kyle Lafferty. I think he feels comfortable in Scotland. I think he felt quite comfortable during his time at Rangers. I think there's a certain comfort. I don't know if it's that part of the world, but when he's playing for Northern Ireland or when he's playing in Scotland, I think he just seems to have an assertiveness about him that I never saw from him, bar when he was at Burnley, like as a young kid trying to make his name in England. I think he's a different type of player up there.
Probably more pressing for Norwich fans is McLean. I mean, what can you tell us about him, mate? From afar, he looks like he's got a little bit of everything in terms of the type of midfielder.
Yeah.
How highly do you rate him?
Right. Let's do the Scottish thing, right? The one thing that I think he doesn't have yet enough of for me to be a really top player is he's not hugely quick. He's not massively quick. Covers ground, but he's not massively quick. So, typical Scottish thing, we'll do the negative first, write him off from the get-go. But other than that, Kenny McLean has a lot to offer as a footballer. He's imaginative, he's creative, he's hard-working, he's tenacious, he's intelligent enough that he's not going to try and do things that are too clever at the wrong times. He's one of these players that's quite good at getting the people next to him just to sort of the cohesion kind of works, and there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of gifts there. But another thing that I think is good for him is in Scotland, a lot of attention is getting paid at the moment to John McGinn, who's had Scotland caps and he's a bit younger. And similarly to McLean, started his career at St Mirren, McGinn's now at Hibs. There's a lot of attention on him and what he's going to do and all the rest of it. I think McLean's actually benefited from going to Aberdeen, where there's a few other figureheads in that squad. So he's not someone that you would immediately, unless you were watching them all the time, point to. But if you do watch Aberdeen all the time, and you watch Kenny McLean all the time, you'll see that he's one of those players, you would say, more likely than not, 99 times out of 100, he will be your 7 out of 10 minimum. But he's also got the ability to light up games.
So, is he close to a Wes Hoolahan type then, or is he a bit more of a combative player than that?
Nah, he's not Wes.
No.
I mean, who is Wesy? He's a different type of player. He's more robust than Wes.
Yeah.
He's more of an all-round midfielder. Yeah, agreed. He's more of an all-round midfielder than Wes Hoolahan. But what he does have is Mario Vrancic is a very gifted, and the reason I pick him out is just the left foot thing in terms of the balance. Vrancic is a very gifted technical footballer. He's physically fairly quick and fairly strong, and he's played in Germany and all of that. But the speed of the British game, it's taken him time, I think, in his time at Norwich to just finally get... it's not their ability as a footballer, it's almost like a cultural thing. Like, they get used to it. Eventually the penny drops and it seems to be coming more naturally for them. In other sports they sometimes talk about the game slowing down. I think that's beginning to happen for Vrancic now. Kenny McLean's not going to have those problems, but all of the attributes that Norwich would have thought, let's go and get Mario Vrancic because this is what he can offer, Kenny McLean's got most of that, and I think a bit more, because he's got that sort of hard-working oomph that you might get from someone who's served their time in the blood and snotters, as we like to call it, of the SPL.
Right.
Or SPF.
I'm going to repeat that phrase. I'm not sure what that even means. But in terms, I was going to ask you, in terms of the Scottish Premiership and the Championship, what is the level? You know, what has he got to step up noticeably from one to the other? Will he be able to handle it? Will he need a period? You're talking about Vrancic, you know, them sort of lads. They needed a fairly lengthy period of adaptation. How long do you think it would take him to be influencing games in the Championship?
Listen, it's always one of these things where if I say something now, it could easily come back to bite me. But in my opinion, Kenny McLean will be starting for Norwich City, barring injury or something untoward. He'll be starting for Norwich City next season.
Okay.
From the get-go?
I would imagine so, unless there's someone else that's sort of got a place in the team and he has to kind of just influence the manager.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be one of those, once he breaks into the team, I think he'll stay in the team.
And his best position, because, I mean, Farker, I think, has been quoted saying he can play 6, he can play 8, he can play the 10 position.
Yeah.
Best position for you?
I'd say 6.
Right.
Personally.
So a little bit deeper, sort of building the play almost.
Yeah.
So sat next to a Tetty or a Godfrey, basically.
Or if Farkas keeping with the sort of more kind of technical mindset and manipulation of possession, blah, 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 Harrison Reed, perhaps.
Yeah.
Potentially. Okay, well, a couple of comments here which follow up on that. John Bull is sort of agreeing with you on Vrancic, really. He's clearly impressed. Madison will probably go, but I fear a Prem club will come in for Vrancic. We need to keep him. He is key for next season. I mean, I'd be surprised at that, to be honest. But we were talking about him on the way home, weren't we? And all the worries about him being a liability that we talked about, him not being up to the pace, they're gone now, really, aren't they?
Well, what I like, and we saw evidence of it again last night, is, as Stuart rightly says, the technical elegance of the guy hasn't been in doubt, and we've seen that. Maybe not in the quantities we'd like to have seen, but you saw that from the very outset. Now, he looks far more able to handle the physicality, the pace. You know, he was driving box to box last night, and we wasn't seeing that at the outset of the season. So, yeah, I think next season he will be a markedly better player, but I'm not quite sure he's going to be on the radar of Premier League clubs at this stage.
I think he's probably just a bit too close to 30 for a Premier League.
No, as well, yeah.
But I agree that he's going to play a big role next year. Connor Southall, one thing which is noticeable for me is the lack of intensity and pace with Norwich's passing at the moment. Movement off the ball needs to be better. Also, surely, what else does Norwich need to do to progress next season? That's a big question, but just to sort of finish on Kenny McLean, you think that he's basically going to add a positive influence to that midfield mix? Yeah,
he's going to be another good player, but I don't think it's the area that Norwich City necessarily needs to bulk up.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was picking any position where I said Norwich City are okay there for next season, it probably would be the kind of roles that McLean is good at, if I'm honest. People are right to pick out his versatility, by the way. I think that's an important asset that he's got, and we've noticed that Daniel Farke's not averse to putting Harrison Reed at right back, for example, or trying things out. Yeah. So I think that will be an asset. But in terms of the kind of bigger picture, as the question was alluding to, Kenny McLean's not going to be all the pieces of the puzzle in one go.
That's fair, yeah. Okay, just a few more questions before we go on to Martin and Naismith. Yeah. Simon King says, with Edwards, I feel we're quite strong in that position already. With Murphy, Madison and Wes, would have thought a lone striker would have offered better competition for Oliveira. Fair point, although obviously Srebeni came in January as well. Joachim Broberg, have you heard of any strikers coming in? Names? I think it's probably a bit early for that, and they will probably have to move Oliveira on before they can realistically just bring someone in, right?
No, I mean names. No, I wouldn't say there's any that are immediately jumping out. But I certainly think areas in terms of the strategy. Clearly, they're going to look at the loan route. You know, look at the success Angus Gunn had. That also opens up the potential. We saw it last night, and he was linked whether there was anything in it in January, but the boy at Middlesbrough, Ashley Fletcher. So, you know, that then opens up the potential to, and obviously Middlesbrough last season being a Premier League club, any young striker's not going to get a look in the Premier League level, but could benefit, like Angus Gunn, like Harrison Reed, from a season long. That's definitely an area they will look at, and also, you know, these leagues in Europe, which they are clearly targeting. I think Webber, not quite sure where he gave the interview, might be the AGM at the Canaries AGM, but 3 or 4 leagues around Europe where they are trying to be very good in their homework and their research and get the drop on championship rivals, you know, and you're thinking obviously the German lower leagues, Holland would be one, I think, as well, and 1 or 2 others where they hopefully can find some players who can come in and really hit the ground running, but B, and this is the imperative through everything, stamped right through everything they do this summer, the finances have got to be right, because they haven't got a lot to play with.
Just on that note, actually, when it comes to can we offer names at this point, I think the one thing that we saw from Norwich City's transfer strategy in the summer is the names are going to come out of nowhere. A lot of these are going to be players that you wouldn't have ever expected, or wouldn't ever, in some cases, have even heard of, that are coming to the club, and some might work, some might not. But I think the key is that it's not that sort of pool of let's just look at people in the British Isles, because if you do that, unless you're buying from Scotland on the cheap, then you're not going to be able to get the same value for money as you're going to get in these other European leagues. I mean, look at Tom Tribal, for example. Like that's the prime example for me of someone that, I mean, he was a relatively well-known player, but I'd never encountered them.
Got off the boil, basically, hadn't he, because of fitness and
exactly, a variety of different issues. Stuart Webber identified a player there. Farke obviously thought he seemed to fit what he was trying to do as well. They've gone in, they've brought him in, and he was a revelation to me in that early to mid period of the season.
Big time. If he'd have been fit all of this season, I think the season may well have shaped up differently if you could have had him and Alex Tettey together more often. I mean, I noticed in January there was a Greek player linked to, the name escapes me, but who Norwich was supposedly scouting on a Greek transfer website. I don't think it was strong enough for us to do a story on it, was it? But and I believe one of Norwich's analysts is Greek as well, so whether that's a league they're looking at, we shall see. And following on from that, the right-back position, Jez Arlo, I know he's the captain, but Ivo Pinto really needs competition. His one-on-one defending is awful, to say the least, I'm afraid. Aidan McGeady did give him a bit of a going over at times last night, but I think he can let Ivo off last night because he scored the goal that mattered, didn't he?
Well, he did, but a little bit like Grant Hanley's in the side, you would hope to be defensively strong. But I think let's be honest, Ivo Pinto, and it sounds a bit of a silly thing to say, but defending isn't his strongest suit, is it? Even though he is a fullback. So I don't think he's going to change now. I think he's 28 years of age. That is his game. You know, he was purchased as one of those very modern, forward-thinking, front foot, give the width to the side type of options, and I don't think too many would disagree that when Harrison Reed was switched there, they probably looked more secure in terms of the defensive element of that role. So there's no doubt Aboué was the one they were very keen to bring in January, and they decided to go to Benfica. I think it was the Dutch defensive lad. Den Haag, that was it. So, you know, it's very clear that they do want to bring somebody in that area. I think we touched on this last night, didn't we? That it's not going to be an established guy. It's probably going to be one a little bit in the Jamal Lewis mould, who they would hope could push a Pinto. But it's a fair point. We've all seen that defensively he isn't the best, and he was exposed again last night by McGeady.
As he was in the home game.
He was, very similar. I mean, that's the trade-off, I guess. You know, if you're Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber, you basically look at Ivo Pinto, what he offers you, what he doesn't offer you, and if on balance you think you're going to get more out of him in terms of productivity, then he'll continue to play. And he is also now, in the absence, which will probably bring us on to Russell Martin and Stephen Naismith, he's one of those experienced guys, and he is a leader in that dressing room, so you also have to factor that in as well. Okay,
we've got some more good questions here, but we've teed it up a few times now, haven't we? But Russell Martin, Stephen Naismith, if we start with Russ, how's he getting on with Rangers? What's the sort of vibe coming out of Ibrox?
I think when you go to the old firm, you're never going to please all of the people all of the time.
Who can?
No, exactly. Unless you're Henrik Larsson, Gaza, Brian Laudrup maybe. But I think when it comes to Russell Martin, there's no doubt, I think, he has strengthened what Rangers have got in terms of defensive options. Russell Martin is a consummate professional, a very, very good leader of men, and for a dressing room.
It just sounds better in a Scottish accent, doesn't it?
It's
like Braveheart. I love it. I'm feeling motivated, Hodgie. Keep going.
I'll be interrupted my flow. Russell Martin is very, very good from that side of things. Obviously, like anyone else, as he gets older, his game's maybe not quite what it was. But what he offers for me, and he's obviously got massive trust from Graham Murty, is for young players at Rangers like Ross McCrory, David Bates, some of these younger defenders that are in there. What he does is he offers an experienced sense of leadership and someone that they can basically model their approach to the game on. Because I think regardless of your opinions on Russell Martin as a footballer, anyone that knows what he puts into the game as a professional appreciates that it's a guy that's gone out and made the most of his ability. And I think that is a lot of Rangers thinking behind the move. Murty knows that he's someone that can go in and set an example for these young guys. They've already got people like Kenny Miller who are doing that, but that's Murty's own man doing that, his own lieutenant in the dressing room. And that, I think, was the main thinking behind the signing. In terms of how he's done, he's not set the heather alight, I wouldn't say, but he's not disgraced himself in any way either. And I think a big disappointment, speaking to Russ, he was really disappointed to miss the Old Firm game. He's really looking forward to getting his teeth into one of those. Missed the last Scotland break as well.
Was that his back?
Yeah, it was.
So it's just a case of for him trying to make the most. I mean, he's admitted himself it's the biggest. It's a totally different kettle of fish going up there in terms of the scrutiny, the media intensity. I mean, what we've got in one county here, you've got an entire country doing it over two teams north of the border. It's different, and I think Russ is enjoying that unique experience at this time in his career.
In terms of Naismith, now obviously we've seen quite a lot of media. You know, he's been very visible up there in Hearts and made it quite clear he's really enjoyed his time. A little bit like, as you've said there with Russell, it strikes me that Craig Levein has valued his elder statesman role within that Hearts squad, and it's not just what he can bring on the pitch, but what he can bring off the pitch. So the vibe, you know, you get reading between the lines is he would like to stay beyond the end of his loan period this season. Hearts, I think Levein has been quoted. I think Anne Budge is it the owner there or the co-owner. They've said if they could do something, they'd like to do something.
She won't budge.
She won't budge, indeed. Yeah. But is that something? I mean, in terms of the finances, could Hearts put a deal together? Do you think? Because he's still got a year left. We all know he's one of the top earners at Carrow Road. Is whether the will's there or not? Do you think the finances could be put in place that Stephen Naismith joins Hearts on a permanent deal in the summer?
Probably not, if I'm being honest. I just don't think the money's there. What I will say, though, which flies directly in contrast to that, is the fact that Stephen Naismith is not a guy that's in football to make a lot of money. That's not his mindset. It's not necessarily the way he thinks about his career. He's not motivated, I don't think, primarily by money. I think he's made enough money in the game now that he's thinking about what he does after he retires from playing. And I think that his main ambition is now to establish himself in other ways so that he can have a career moving forward. And I think he realises, given the way, I mean, he obviously did pretty well at Everton. He was in and out the team, more of a bit part player. But he had the chance to come to Norwich and really be that sort of flagship main guy, and it just never happened. Now, I think he's realised after that, and this is me surmising, but I think he's realised that if he wants to have this career after the game, he's going to have a better platform to do it, establishing himself again in Scotland, be that in a coaching route, in a punditry route, whatever way he decides to go. I imagine it will be coaching. I think that will be his thinking, is that he wants to stay in Scotland. In terms of Hearts having the money, it's really hard to see, but as I say, I don't think money will necessarily be his primary motivating factor moving forward now.
Cool. Well, we'll see where it goes. Here ends our Scottish section of the of this week's Pinkun Show. But we've got plenty of comments to get through, so I'll try and go through them as quickly as possible. Given the money that is likely to come in during the summer, this is from James Kent, sorry, what do you think the summer transfer budget will be? My guess is around 5 million. Also, what fee do you think we will get for Maddison? Press talk of 30 million seems high, but surely 20 million plus. This has already been talked about quite a lot, hasn't it? And we've had Josh Murphy thrown into the mix as well today, the Mirror linking in with Leicester and Palace. But I'd have thought James's expectation that the actual transfer budget is going to be quite small is probably about accurate, even if they do get in big fees.
Yeah, no, I think 5 might be on the generous side, if I'm honest.
Unless they get in a real lot of money.
Well, yeah, but even then, because obviously what that money will be mainly diverted towards is plugging holes. Like 25 million, I think, was the quoted figure, or in that ballpark, in terms of the final tranche of parachute money. So the end of this season, moving into the new season, new financial accounting period, that's a hole that needs replacing, unless you contract, which they are trying to do, obviously, in terms of the salary of the first team squad, and the turnover and the revenue. But ultimately, I think it's going to be another summer where, like last summer, yes, they'll want to refresh the squad, but ultimately it's about lowering the wage bill and remaining a transfer surplus, as they did in the first 2 windows under Farker and Webber. So that isn't going to change. It's in terms of the scale, with Maddison, that hinges completely on which of these clubs, and there have been many speculated, actually come to Norwich and say, right, let's talk numbers. What are you looking to do? And then if it can get an auction going, then it could get up 20 plus. But a bit like Alex Pritchard, there was only one buyer in town, that was Huddersfield, and as a result, Norwich's bargaining position is a lot weaker. So it'll be the same scenario again. If there's multiple Premier League clubs who are serious about signing James Maddison, then fair enough, I can see 20 plus. But if not, I think they might have to lower their expectations, and of course then any deal would be packed full of add-ons and clauses. But in terms of the initial take-up, might be lower, might be down to 15-17 million mark, I think.
We were talking about in terms of timeline this summer. Of course, you've got a World Cup, haven't you? And when you're dealing with potentially the teams who have been linked, Man City, Tottenham, Liverpool, he's basically been linked with everyone, isn't he? That could hold things up. From the outside looking in, almost as it is, Hodgie, do you think that 20 million, or the expectation of getting 20 million for a player like Maddison, is optimistic, or do you think that's what he's worth?
Well, I think it's easily what he's worth. I said at the start of this season, after a couple of games, that James Maddison would be Norwich's first £20 million player. Other people have probably said it, by the way. But I did say that because I felt sure of it. You can just tell when someone's when it's their moment, I think, in football, especially when you've been about a wee bit and you've sort of seen false dawns and so many situations that don't work out. You can really tell when it's happening for someone. I think that's undoubtedly true with James Maddison. I think 20 million would be the minimum that I would accept if I was Stuart Webber, given the contract that the young man's on and given what he's proven. I think another interesting factor, just to throw into the mix, based on what you were saying, Paddy, you mentioned Nelson Oliveira earlier. I think he's Norwich's other highly sellable asset. I know he's not done what Maddison's done this season, but Oliveira's scored goals over a career in loads of different countries, and he's got a very, very good reputation internationally in various different countries and leagues and things like that. That makes him a sellable asset. I think he'll want to move in the summer, and I think the club will want to move him. And I think how much they can get for Nelson Oliveira, just to answer the question from our friend on Facebook, sorry, can't remember the name.
James Kent it was with this one?
James, yeah. So good question, James. I think to answer your question, if the club get a big fee for Nelson Oliveira, that could supplement any transfer budget that's there.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll rattle through a few more. Ben Woodward, of the younger players out on loan, who do you think will be ready to step up next season? We saw Ben Godfrey and Carlton Morris at Wembley on Sunday with Shrewsbury. Of course, didn't go well. I think Ben Godfrey is the one that you can nail on who's going to be involved. Carlton Morris, we'll have to see. And another name to throw in there, Todd Campbell. Joachim Broberg says, what is the status of Campbell? I believe he's fit again now. He's missed about 5 or 6 games.
He's on the bench, mate. Yeah. I think they played Monday night, and he was on the bench. I'm not sure if he got on. I didn't check, but he was obviously fit enough. So, interestingly, I mean, Fortuna Sittard, this is obviously in the second tier in Holland, and I hadn't checked for 2 or 3 weeks, and they were 4th or 5th in the pecking order. The first one goes up automatically, then the 2 down to 5 go into the playoffs. Now they've obviously come with a major burst, because I think, certainly going into Monday's fixtures, they were top of the table there.
Well, they had that massive fuss which made sort of national headlines, didn't they, with Sunday Elise, the former Nigeria player, that massive falling out with their board, but then I think they appointed their head of academy or something, and he seems to have kicked it on. So yeah, hopefully Todd can be back in the team, and he's one who has got the potential to be in and around the squad at Norwich next year. A lot of that may depend on a man I'm going to mention in a minute, but a good name thrown into the hat here, or into the frame, sorry, for a possible striker, Will Grigg at Wigan. Sean Holman, we need the Wigan striker to score goals. Can't remember his name, but sure you'll know who I'm talking about. On the Ball City. Pretty sure that's Will Grigg. He had a great season for Wigan. They're now top of League One, aren't they? So one to potential. I think he's about 25, 26 now, isn't he? So if you're going to get him, you have to get him now. But he's going to cost big money, isn't he?
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem.
I think that it comes back to what we were saying earlier. If you do your shopping in the UK, you're getting Will Grigg, who, yeah, he's on fire sometimes.
I don't think he likes that song, does he? No, he never seems to want to
I
talk
don't
about
like
it.
that song either, to be honest. Been overexposed.
I should have started singing it, shouldn't I? Really.
No.
But I think
Finish
that,
on that.
just on the subject of if you do your shopping in the UK, you're going to pay more than what you would pay for the exact same player in loads of different other leagues. And that even applies to a League One striker, which is what Will Grigg is. And let's be honest, I don't think he's had many sort of seasons where he's been a regular Championship player.
Didn't really do it last year for him, did he?
I mean, most of his regular football has come in the 3rd tier.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, I mean, do you really want to be gambling sort of big money on someone like that? Or would you rather gamble on a loan signing from sort of someone in Germany that we could maybe sign for £1 million or £2 million the next summer, you know? I think that's going to, and I think for a lot of fans, they're going to have to get used to the fact that the market that Norwich is going to be shopping in is probably not going to be a domestic one all that often anymore.
I'd agree with
But
that.
perhaps that type of player, I mean, he's a fox in the box type, isn't he? Just to offer something a little bit different, perhaps, to Srebeni, if we're looking at him and maybe Carlton Morris and another.
Yeah, well, also as well, I mean, you're talking about his age. I think in terms of the age profile, yes, okay, the overall thrust is to bring down the age, and we're talking about Cantwell, different area of the pitch slightly, but the Lewises and the Cantwells, that's fine. But I just think now it's got to the point where focusing purely on the top end of the pitch, they do need a little bit more experience. Because Srebeni is potential and will remain potential for the foreseeable future. As you say, Carlton Morris, okay, he's had a season in League One, but he hasn't, he hasn't gone into overdrive in terms of the goals he scored. So I think it's going to take somebody who's been around the block a little bit, and now we're not talking the complete other end of the scale, and he's 30 plus or whatever. But I mean, Farkas sort of framed it in the last day or two, and it's pertinent after last night. Those type of games where you're playing sides low down in the table. More so at Cairo, where they come when they park the bus, and you're only going to have 1 or 2 chances. Somebody who's just in the box, you threw his name in, and obviously it's an easy one. But in terms of Norwich's recent history, it is. It's a Grant Holt type of player who's an absolute nightmare for opposition defences. He's in the referee's ear. He's just a horrible individual to have to play against. If he's in your if he's in your team, you absolutely love him.
Yeah.
And so do the supporters, because they know things are going to happen positively if you can get the service into him. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it needs. And as you say, that would then be a little bit different to a Srebeni and Morris, these type of younger strikers who are in the same sort of mould. So that's what I would like to see. If I had one wish for the transfer window, it was somebody who knows what it's all about and can basically offer something a little bit different at the top end of the pitch.
It's the hardest thing to do in football, though, isn't it?
Indeed.
Score goals. Craig Brown says get an English striker from League One / League Two, and follows on from what you were saying really there, Hodgie. I mean, you look at, say, Jack Marriott at Peterborough, scored a stupid amount of goals this season, but he's going to cost you 7-8 million, so that doesn't seem likely. Neil Austin says chances of landing Moritz Leitner. And of course, he's on loan from Augsburg, who I think look like they're going to get relegated from the Bundesliga. I think I heard that on the radio earlier. So, I mean, that may boost Norwich's chances in some way. I guess with the way things have gone with his injury, it may well be the chance of another loan more than anything, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I did actually put that to Daniel last week, and you got the sense, certainly from his side of it, he'd love to get him back here again. But ultimately, and Harrison Reed's in the same scenario, it's really for the parent club to make the final decision. But I think both players would clearly not be averse to coming back. You know, Moritz has been a bit sidelined by the hamstring problems, but I think both have really enjoyed coming into something new, a different environment, really tried to buy into what Daniel Farke is trying to do and trying to build. And yeah, I'm pretty certain, certainly from Norwich's side of the fence, that if there was a potential to do those two deals, and I think certainly that with Reed and probably Leitner anyway, to be brutally honest, they would have to be loans again. I don't think, as we're discussing here, Norwich financially could put packages together to do permanent deals for those two particular individuals. But if there was a loan potential, then yeah, why not? Because we've seen enough with Leitner in that initial 1 or 2 games that his ability is second to none at this level. At this level, he will. And what I feel probably is the problems he's getting now fitness wise are because he more or less sat on the bench for 12 months at Augsburg, you know, and his base fitness wasn't there, particularly coming into an environment like the Championship and the gruelling Tuesday, Saturday. You get Moritz Leitner back in June, you give him a full pre-season, and then watch him go, because there's no doubt the classes at this level would be as good as anything.
If James Maddison was to go in the summer, and you were to bring Moritz Leitner back on loan, now Maddison's having a pretty historic season, right? Nobody's going to necessarily replicate that. But in terms of identikit type of player that you want to bring in to replace someone with the creativity that Maddison's got, Moritz Leitner is probably about as good as Norwich are going to get.
He likes set piece and he's certainly creative. That all leads on nicely to the final comment, which is a question which we can all answer. I'll kick off first because I've had a chance to think about the answer, so it gives you guys a chance. Taylor Rush asks, which signing this season has impressed you the most? I think I'll go for Grant Hanley. They pay good money, £3.5 million. I've been really, really impressed with how consistent he's been. He has genuinely improved Norwich defensively. Tom Tribal, I think if he'd have managed to stay fit, would have been the man I was going for, because I think the way he makes Norwich tick, particularly when he's alongside Alex Tettey, has been so impressive, and I'm looking forward to seeing him fully fit. So I'm sort of ignoring Angus Gunn a little bit as a loan signing and Reed, but I'll go for Grant Hanley. Pad?
Yeah. Well, if we have to pick somebody who you haven't picked, Dave, you've gone through about 5 players there, so that's you've not left us a lot of choice, have you? But
stolen them all.
But setting those ones aside, I wouldn't disagree with your assessment on any of those. I think Zimmerman. In terms of,
that was going to be mine.
Sorry, pal. Sorry. You can go for Marcus Edwards.
Well,
but,
I have been away a while.
But just in terms of, you know, a free transfer signing, 4th tier of German football. Wasn't quite sure at the start of the season, but how that lad has adapted and really shown that he moving forward now with a full season under his belt in the Championship, he knows what it's all about now. And importantly, I think with Zimmerman's development, he needs to have the right players around him, and Hanley and Closer, because they've got a little bit more experience, a little bit more nous, but the raw material is there, and as we say, and it's all pertinent in terms of Norwich and their transfer dealings and the finances that are contracting what they can do. There's a prime example of a guy who didn't cost him a penny, and he's clearly proven he can operate in the Championship, and I think there's potential for him to kick on, and who knows, because you look at him and he's got everything he needs to be a dominant centre-back at that level.
Hodgie? Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to agree.
I mean, the one I was going to pick was Zimmerman. Now, part of it's a kind of sort of cult hero statusy mindset kind of vote, because I just loved that Zimmerman came in and the first thing that he was doing was just heading balls and kicking balls away.
Did you see the one at Wolves? I don't know if you saw that on the highlights.
Unbelievable, right? And see the fact that we've got an old school defender like that in the Norwich City team. I'm all for that. I think every team should have that kind of player, even if it's someone that you don't play. If you're a Barcelona, or I mean, Atletico Madrid have their own version in a way in Diego Godin. You know, like he's just a guy that puts his body on the line time after time. And I think personally with Zimmerman there, I think that kind of attitude is what Norwich City need more of. I think we've got loads of good footballers, but we need a bit more of that sort of prepared to put your body on the line, commit 110%. And I think if you could marry those two schools of thought, then I don't think Daniel Farke will be far away.
Okay.
Agreed.
There we go. Toby Smith suggests Danny Harlton to also enter the the frame for the striker, Luton top scorer, but I just checked and I did have a feeling he's nearly 30, so I can't see Norwich signing a League Two striker who's nearly 30 at the moment.
No.
I think we're much more likely to see a continental rival or a lone arrival than that. But I think that'll probably do us, boys. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, pal.
Yeah,
Cheers, pal.
good to catch up with you. And
can we go home now, mate? I've got to go to bed.
yeah, there's more Champions League football tonight as well, isn't
All
there?
right, and we'll watch a bit of Champions
We'll
League.
catch up with that.
And we'll go to bed.
Great. Well, Pad will be on duty for the press conference on Friday, and then Mike will be back with us on Saturday for the Cardiff game, and we'll see how this finish to the season is going to continue. 4 games to go. Can they, get a win on Saturday, and it's 3 games unbeaten, isn't it? So let's finish on a positive.
On the Bog City.
Like it. Cheers, guys.